Live. Hey, what is going on, everybody?
Then how am I gonna?
What, man? Go ahead.
I'm gonna play music. Go ahead. It's gonna go live when I turn my head.
My bad. But anyway, we're gonna let my man Leif Taylor get on the music. DJ Leif here start us off. But I went ahead and pushed the button just because that's what I do. I just push buttons. If a button is there, I'm gonna push it. But two shy guys in a mic here today.
Going first.
This is why. See, this is why we like Leif in the command seat of the command center. But we're going live right now, a little earlier than we normally do. We had some time, so we figured we'd go ahead and get on now. Talking about today, we're going to be talking about not losing momentum. And also D-Live, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you may find yourself consuming this content. Thank you, and we appreciate it. But hey, Kendra, how you doing, Miss Camacho? Today we're talking about not losing momentum and staying diligent and consistent and keeping a pace in life today. You know, we live in a world.
On that one, okay.
Yeah, we live in a world where it's hard to build momentum in whatever you endeavor, whenever you decide to pursue in life. And life has a way of knocking you off guard sometimes. Life has a way of throwing obstacles and hurdles in your way that's going to have you slow down and try to knock you out. So, you know, me and Leif was just sitting here conversating together before we got on. It's like, what are we going to talk about today? And we just started talking, and then he made the statement of he just didn't want to lose momentum. And so, we kind of sit there for a minute, and it's like, yep, that's it right there. There it is. Don't lose momentum. And a personal story I can attest to this is that when you allow life to kind of knock you out and take you off guard, it is very hard to start building that momentum, getting that snowball to build back up. I can remember that there were, my one position that I had early on in my career is that I got to a point of where I had a lot of things on my plate, and it took a while to build up to maintain and hold that position. But once I was able to hold that position, it was easy to scale up, and it was easier to keep that momentum going. But in the initial process of getting that going, it was very hard, very rough. It took a lot of energy just to maintain and sustain that certain level of work and content that I was producing. And I've noticed that over time, when you get knocked off the horse, that each time that you try to build momentum and get it back, it becomes harder and harder. So if you want to kind of just...
Yeah, so what's going on, Mouse? How you doing?
Hey, everybody.
What's up, everybody over there? Yeah, we're splitting it up tonight since we're in the same room. It's rare that we get together. So we were talking about the momentum aspect of it, and we're just talking about all the different things we're trying to do in terms of streaming content, getting content out, a lot of work, and when it starts piling on, you got to make sure that you keep your momentum going, because starting the train is a whole lot more difficult than it is to keep the train going, right? You consume less energy to keep the train running than you do getting it started, and that's with any engine or any type of energy excess, right?
Yeah.
It's easier to keep the momentum going, so that's what we were talking about. And it's the same thing in terms of life, in terms of projects that you may have, in terms of, goal setting, in terms of putting, we was talking about walking like I talk, right? It's easier to talk than it is to do the walking. And once you start walking, you don't want to start from scratch. You don't want to start from zero. So you want to make sure that you keep going. So if you started on your goals, if you started writing down those things, don't stop. I don't care what you do. Make sure you do something daily to keep the momentum.
Man,
going.
I wish somebody would have really pushed that into me.
Yeah.
When I was younger, is that no matter what, do not stop. Stay consistent. And if you find yourself getting knocked off, get back right at it, because if you don't, that's when stuff starts piling up on you.
Yeah,
it does suck, and I'm speaking from a pain point of having experience, having getting all my ducks in a row, so to speak, and then having one little thing knock me off, and then all the ducks start flying off all over the place, and it's hard to get them back. So if you don't get anything else out of today's show, out of today's thought, it's that do not allow life to knock you off course if possible, and if it does, be quick about getting back on course, and be quick about getting those ducks back in line. And maybe a little later on we'll talk about some how-tos as far as getting your ducks in a row.
Yep.
Getting started, and then once you get started and you start building momentum, how to capitalize on that momentum when you get that train going, and how to keep it going, and if it does get knocked off track, how to quickly get that back on track.
Yes. Yeah, so let's talk about starting to get those things in the row, right?
Yes.
One of the themes that we constantly repeat is goal setting.
Goal setting.
And of course, I said 10x those goals, get tenfold return, expect larger things to come from it, and then from there, then you can actually start moving, right? It's like, then that's when you start taking the small steps. Too often we want to take the small goals, so all the steps stay small, right? Maximize your goals and the potential of the goal, and then you start doing those micro transactions, so to speak.
Those daily.
Yeah. Those daily, the small things to get you where you need to be. You gotta fill that gap from where you want to go to where you want to be, and you got to make yourself be that person, right? So you got to figure out where you lack in terms of achieving that goal, and so you want to start there, figure out what the goal is, right? Step one is figure out what the goal is, figure out what your whys are, figure out, okay, the things that you want to accomplish with your life. Maybe it's not even such a life goal, maybe it's a big fitness goal, maybe it's a big maybe it's something practical for you, but even with the practical thing, I want you to make it exponential in terms of what you want to get out of it. And then from there, once you figured out what it is, you start working backwards, right? You look at the macro and then you break it down to the micro. And what that means is you look at the overall picture, where you want to end up, and then you start breaking it down into bite-sized steps, right? The old African proverb, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right?
Yeah.
And so you just figure out where you need to start making those bites to start consuming that elephant, right? So from there, once you start eating, though, once you start chewing on that elephant, do not stop.
Don't stop.
Do not stop, because you'll stop. You're like, you know what? I'm tired of elephants. I don't want to eat no more elephant. I'm done. And then you end up giving up on the go. And when you start back over, you realize that elephant's a whole lot tougher.
You get mad at yourself. Yeah. I get mad at myself when I stop or I get knocked off, and it's like, some time later, it's like, man, if I just would have kept at it, I would be here. Yeah. So if anything else, we talk about not being driven by fear, but at the same time being afraid of your future, what your future self will say if you don't stay consistent and don't allow yourself to build up momentum and stay on top of that momentum. So fear, used in a good way, is being afraid of what your future self would do. Like, you don't want your future self to smack you in the back of the head and be like, all you had to do is just keep going.
What?
You had momentum. All you had to do is just stay at it and stay consistent.
Yeah, and here's the thing that you don't know, right? If you have strength to do something now, you don't know if that strength will be there later.
Oh my goodness!
Because I'm telling you,
you get older.
Yeah, and Kimba said, yes, I'm building daily, and it's an exciting process.
Yeah,
it's exciting the first time. First time around.
Oh man, yeah.
Second time around, it's a little less exciting. I'll put it that way.
Because you've seen that story before.
Oh man, yeah. Because then you get there, then you got to convince yourself that the work that you put in the first time was worth doing. So you gotta work to get back to your starting position from last time. And so it may not be as exciting then. So take advantage of that excitement while you have it, and then start moving from there. Right?
Yeah.
So also do us a favor, like and share this for us. We're trying to do the two screens here, and as soon as I go over here, I lose track of what's going on on over here. Anyway, I get that out of the way. Yeah, Miles said, be afraid of letting yourself down. Yeah, and that's one of the things is just, and also just holding yourself accountable to you.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know, it's great if you have community, if you have friends that you can be accountable to.
And that goes into one of the how-tos of how you initially, as far as like setting down and really clarifying what you want and clarifying your goals and clarifying the end game. And then also building a community, finding your tribe, discovering your connections that will help you maintain that momentum in your life on going in the direction that you would like to go. And finding those people that you can connect to, and being purposeful and intentional about making those connections, howbeit whether it be in your regular life or howbeit whether it be on in your virtual life, so to speak, in the virtual community. Actually, you know, the tools and platforms that we have available to us now make it more easier when it comes to having goals and then building momentum and getting a boost or a push or drawing on strength from your tribe.
Exactly.
Thank Mo.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
You found your tribe. With the state of affairs in the world that we live in now, it's very easy to find a small group of people to connect with daily, regularly, that you can draw strength, encouragement, inspiration, that you can draw some motivation from, and that will help push and inspire you on a regular daily basis, because we need those daily hits every day. If you don't get those daily hits, it's hard to maintain that momentum. So that's one of the reasons why this show exists. That's one of the reasons why me and Leif do what we do.
Yep.
It's just that I do it because I know how important it is when it comes to my daily life to really stay focused and just to really keep a mindset that there's more to this world than meets the eye, and that we all need encouragement and inspiration, and we need those moments of those small micro hits that's going to help you get through those moments of life where you may feel like, you know what, skip it, I don't care about the momentum, I'm getting off this train. Yeah. But we're here to say, no, you don't want to get off that train. Keep it going in whatever endeavor you've decided to pursue in your life, because life is short, and we often say, you want to do your best to live life the way that you've deemed necessary, the way that's going to satisfy your soul, the way that's going to speak and fulfill your heart's desire as it connects and as it becomes more aware, as it becomes more conscious to the overall the big consciousness in the sky. I'll throw out many terms out there because I don't know who's watching in the community. The big consciousness in the sky.
Shaq. The big Aristotle.
The big Aristotle. Some would say, I'll say, just speaking for myself, Yahweh, God, making that connection to the throne room and doing your best to stay in His presence and finding out His desire for your life. When you do that, that's where you're going to find the most the most happiness, the most fulfillment in your life. I don't know if that was grammatically correct, but we're going to roll with it. I'm good. I'm used to making up stuff as we go. So
yeah, as Miles said, it's like telling people you're on a diet and they see you eating donuts. You already know what your friends will say. Yeah, so that accountability helps. And again, you don't necessarily want to feel guilty about it, but if it's helping push you forward, then that's a good guilt. It really is. My man Mo said the Wacoinda Tribe 30,000 plus. All of Wacoinda helps fuel my fire. I just hope I can give as much as I receive from all of you. Yeah, man, and that's the thing, is just the people within the group can definitely help motivate and fuel you. And going back to what I was saying originally, it's still good to have self-accountability, because then you can multiply that self-accountability by being accountable to others as well. And so, because sometimes, like, Kevin's not, he doesn't call me like, hey, like, you know, you got to wake up in the morning and start doing some work, right? He don't do that. So I got to be accountable to myself, and then I got to be accountable to my family. You know, I have a family. If you have a family, you got to be accountable to that.
Yeah.
I'm sure his boys don't try to make him wake up first. You know, if daddy's sleeping, they going to try to stay asleep as long as possible. So
they gonna milk that thing.
Exactly. So that's the thing. So just make sure that you stay accountable to yourself first and foremost. Stay accountable to God, and then stay accountable to your community. That keeps you. It keeps you humble, and it keeps you forever moving forward, right?
Yeah.
And as long as you keep that at the forefront of your thoughts, because as soon as you start losing that, then you start going
drifting. Yeah.
Just start meandering about, doing other things. And so it's always important that we remind one another as well, right? We're talking about how do we get going so we can create that momentum. So you always have to remind yourself of your why. You have to remind yourself of the reason why you're doing it in the first place, and you have to remind yourself that it's the best thing for you.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you lose track of that when you don't feel like doing something.
Yeah. To kind of break it down simply as far as the how-to, one of the ways I kind of one of the ways you could frame this is that I refer to what's known as the 4 C's of contentment: contribute, connect, cope, and then also cook. And just looking at the 4 C's, this isn't the only way you could frame it, but this is just one of the things that kind of popped on my head right now as we were talking when it comes to starting something and maintaining momentum naturally without having to always depend on self-discipline. It's, you know, self-discipline is good, but it's finite. You want that infinite. You want to make sure
it's finite daily.
You only get a certain amount of being able to will yourself through. At some point, your body or something's going to say, "Hey, we have to shut down." Yeah. So you want to make sure that you always do your best to stay connected and have that underlying source of strength that's going to help you get through those moments in life when you really don't feel like doing it.
Yeah.
Because those days will come. That's just the way it is, you know.
Think about it. That's why you haven't started yet. So those days may be here for you right now.
Yeah. The 4 C's: connect. You want to make sure that you're intentional and purposeful about connecting with anything, everything that's going to help you along the way, that's going to help push and inspire you to do and live the way you want to live.
Yep.
Whether it be other people in your real life, whether it be people in your virtual life, whether it be making connections with people through some of the materials that they produce, like books, magazines, articles, speeches, podcasts, something of that nature. And then also cooking. I meant to ask before, how did cook become, or why does it fit in the 4 C's?
Because it starts with a C.
Rachel Knox. Yeah, it starts with a C. It just fits in there. Well, cooking is something that initially it's something we've gotten away from as a society, as a culture, and cooking requires that you go out and you prepare, and it requires that you develop and cultivate a lifestyle that requires you to prepare, that requires you to slow down and take your time as far as how you go about your life. So number one, it helps slows you down. It helps you as far as when you start cooking. It helps you source and hopefully take a look at your what you're consuming. And what you consume, we want you to be consuming natural foods that are nature approved, and those will help give you the nutrients and things that you need to naturally have that source of energy when everything else fails.
Yeah, and also typically when people cook, like you said, you tend to take more consideration as to what you're making.
Yes.
You understand more about the food that you're making. And this doesn't necessarily apply across the board, but the likelihood of you developing that, and also like it breeds more discipline.
Yes.
And it cultivates discipline into your nature.
Yes. When I started following the Sea of Cooking, it really turned my life upside down, and that I became less dependent on fast food. I became less dependent on eating out, and it forced me to start looking at all the areas of my life as far as preparation, being disciplined, budgeting, and establishing relationships. One finite example that just to speak to cooking is and how it turned my life upside down is it forced me to look at what I was eating, and it forced me to it pushed me actually to start making connections with the community around me. For example, I made a connection with a local farm that I worked on for a year. I developed and cultivated some relationships in which I started getting more nutrient dense food, and when I started consuming that nutrient dense food, it forced me to start going into the kitchen, and it forced me to start cooking and preparing. It forced me to start doing things that I didn't know how to do, and it forced me to start leveling up as far as my skill set with respect to producing good nutrient dense food not only for me but for my family, which now my family bonds, my family ties are more strengthened, and that the cooking forced us to revolve around the kitchen and revolve around the table as far as my house. So that's just a small finite example.
And also, like for my wife, like when we started transitioning from the workforce to the home to homeschool the kids and take care of the kids, then because I used to cook a lot, and then we started transitioning. So now here's one aspect of cooking that is beneficial for her that is not necessarily translated to me because I don't do the cooking as much, is her knowledge on nutrition it is increased tenfold.
Yeah.
Like literally, she's like an expert scientist when it comes to nutrition and all the things that I actually eat. Versus, she knows more about the food that I eat than I do, and that's the irony of it, right? Because she does the research, she talks to the grocers, she knows who produces the food, she knows where the food comes from, and she's established those relationships, which then goes back into what Kevin was talking about in terms of community.
Yes.
So that's, we always talk about her getting free things and receiving free things is because she's become known to them, and so that actually helps. It's like a continual feedback loop, right?
Yes, a positive continual feedback loop.
And so once you get that going, let's see, I think it was A.K. Sapoko. He said consistency, and basically this is what we're talking about. Momentum equals consistency.
Yeah.
And so in the case that we're talking about, and once you start losing that consistency, once you start losing that momentum, it's just as much mental as it is physical.
It's probably more. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Because it's taxing on you, and then once you actually break that cycle of momentum, that cycle of consistency, then your body gets accustomed to whatever it is that you're doing in place of that. And so now you have to break a new habit, or maybe it's an old habit that you really didn't break completely off, that's keeping you from being moving forward towards your goals, that's keeping you from being the creative that you want to be, like Miles was talking about. Those things start holding you back because, again, the fight is against your old self.
Yeah, that's what, we all have to deal with that. Yeah,
you got to fight your old self. I don't know if you all remember, I think it was Superman 3, like the old Christopher Reeve Superman, where he fought himself. It was the one where it's like, it was really, he had this arch nemesis, but the real battle was between him and himself. And there was a fight between Clark Kent and Superman, and it's funny, but I remember watching it, and I was watching it with my cousin. I was like, that's the realest battle you'll ever face, is yourself. Overcoming yourself, overcoming the inconsistencies that you have within you, overcoming the laziness. I saw a post from Farouk Hunter earlier talking talking about how lazy people are. They just have to admit it. Seth Godin, Seth Godin said the same thing. He's like, hey, sometimes you just said people just need to come to the realization that they don't want to work. Yeah, it's like, just say that you're lazy. Don't say that it's unattainable, because the way as much information and as much access that is out there, it may be more difficult for some. Some people don't have the same opportunities. However, the opportunities are still there.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. You just may have to dig a little, I'm going to go into Princess and the Frog, dig a little deeper, Mama Odie. But sometimes you got to dig a little deeper just to find where those opportunities are. However, you cannot blame everybody for your situation. You have to, at the end of the day, it comes down to you looking at you.
Oh, man.
Facing yourself in the mirror. It's like, okay, am I really about that life? Sometimes the answer is no. It's like, it's like, look, I'm not about that life. Like Kevin says,
let me find something.
Fight. I'm putting up my hands. I ain't trying to fight.
Let me find something I am about.
Exactly. And so that's the thing. You have to come to that realization. And then once you come to that realization, then you have an option. You have a choice. And the choice is, are you going to change, or are you just going to accept the situation that you're in and call it a day?
Man, that's really hitting it right on the head, because it forces you to kind of sit back and think and try to want to get more clarity about what it is you really are about and what it is you really want. And that's something we often talk about, the importance of doing and knowing in today's world, and when it comes to the battle of the self, is just really setting down and taking those mindful moments of meditation and contemplation, and really asking yourself what it is that you want to do, what it is really going to satisfy your soul's, your heart's desire, what it is that's going to really just keep you happy and healthy in this world. So yeah, that's really hitting on it as far as when it comes to momentum, and when it comes to staying consistent and diligent about some of the things that you've desired and want to achieve in this life. Omar Thomas said, yeah, it's hard battling yourself. That comment's right on target. Hopefully,
the continuous, Rachel said, a continuous cycle building momentum.
But I just want to make sure that hopefully, Rachel, that we did kind of answer your thought or your question or comment about cooking. And if you want like further insight of that, you can actually go to the book The Hacking of the American Mind by Dr. David Lustig, who is a endocrine neurobiologist, something like that. And he wrote that book. That's his latest book, and he's the one that came up with the 4 C's framework, and he talked about cooking and how important that is when it comes to your health and happiness, when it comes to your contentment in this world. He also wrote the book talking about sugar, and he talked about some of the experiments and stuff that they done on rats and how powerful sugar is when it comes to the food that we eat, and how it affects not only your physical health, but how it affects how you feel a lot of the times, and how it affects how you think. And when you can get somebody's heart and mind, then you can affect somebody's behavior.
Period.
You have them. So we have to be mindful of what we consume, not only physically, but also what we consume mentally, and what we consume when it comes to what we allow our heart to be open to. This will affect you on all levels of existence, and when you can do that, you can affect or your momentum, your capacity to stay moving forward can be affected. And when you want to build up momentum and movement and moving forward in whatever you've deemed necessary or you desire, you want that to be as effortless as possible in this world for those moments and days and times when you don't feel like, you don't want your feelings to get in the way of your progression. So this is a way of when it comes to getting burnt out and getting knocked off track. Yep. What did Kimba say?
So you said we must focus more on what we want rather than what we don't.
Yeah, that's important.
And again, it's the guiding, right? I always talk like I just said just now, right? So I'm gonna quit saying that like we talked about before. But anyway, when I took gymnastics, that was one of the things that you had to do in order to stick a landing, right? If you're doing a somersault or forward flip or back flip, whatever, you always have to have a focus point. And sometimes when you don't have a focus, you end up falling short.
Yeah.
You'll fall, you'll stumble, you won't get to where you want to go. So you definitely have to keep your eyes on the prize. But see, Miles said, "Hi, my name is Miles, and I'm a sugar addict." Hey, that's Miles, real. America.
America's the world.
Yeah, the world.
Sugar addicts.
Yeah, full of them, full of fiends, and that's the thing. And
that's right. Fiend is right because in the book he talks about how it's classified as a drug or something. Sugar is classified as a drug.
Yep.
So it's one of the most. It's more powerful than heroin. I think there's a rat study that's often talked about where they gave the rats the option to do heroin or sugar, and the rats opted to do the sugar. So sugar is very, very, very powerful.
And it was crazy. I ain't even gonna get into that. Never mind.
Okay.
But anyway, so going back to did you finish your 4 C's? You got 2 of them, right?
Cooking and connecting, contributing, and all contributing mean is giving yourself over to something bigger than yourself.
Yes,
it means to serve, lead, and be humble enough to be a servant leader and to contribute in whatever way, shape, or form that you can versus living for self. When you live for self, that gets old real fast, and it doesn't lead to much.
Yeah,
and we see a lot of people. Hollywood is rife with examples of people, not only Hollywood, but just life in itself. It's full of what happens.
Family. It's
family. It's full of what happens
neighborhoods
when you live for self. We're in a world full of self-livers, but we're also in a world full of people who are givers and who have taken on the mantle and lived a lifestyle of giving, and attributing, giving themselves something to more than just them. That's what makes life worth living.
Let's see. Miles Kimber said I used raw cacao bark and dates to remove sugar cravings.
Yep. I
tried to do the same thing, but I was too busy eating ice cream. But just like you have to find natural supplements and things that help curb your appetite for some of those things. Sometimes you have to quit cold. So it just really depends on what the recommendation is for your particular body type, for your particular addiction, so to speak. Different people operate differently. For me, I'm a cold turkey type dude, meaning I just stop altogether. But I can do that when it comes to eating certain things. But some habits are more difficult than just that. So you have to know where your strengths and your weaknesses are internally before you start taking on some of these things.
Yeah, and the last C is cope. To cope, and to cope means just dealing with stress. Life is stressful in and of itself. That's what life is. Life is designed to bring you all kinds of stresses, and it's up to us to learn how to, when you get into the natural rhythms and cycles of life, meaning getting good sleep, meaning being incorporating proactive practices in your life, when it means getting into a network and cultivating a group of friends that you can kind of be open and transparent with. These are ways in which you can help getting good sleep, good rest, taking moments of mindfulness, doing whatever it takes to help alleviate and give yourself margin in order to detoxify in your heart, mind, and body as far as coping with stress. If you allow this stuff to build up, then you are setting yourself up for a lot of ailments and troubles, which will slow your momentum down and which will knock you off course. So hopefully that makes sense. The 4 C's: cope, contribute, connect, and cooked. cook. And if you want more information about that on a deeper level, you can always reference the book, The Hacking of the American Mind.
Post it in the comments.
I will.
Yes.
Oh man.
You see, I did that. You see, I did that. I gave him momentum.
It gave me more.
Community gave him momentum to do some posting.
Gotcha.
So he'll post that. Said, Mouse, I've been eating tamarind pulp. I'm not familiar with that. There are a lot of good natural supplements.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there when it comes to cooking and supplements.
And that's the benefit of cooking, like we were talking about, is that it increases your knowledge base and it increases your connection with the foods that you take into your body, right? And a lot of the habits that I started developing early was because, like, my grandmother, my aunts, and things like that, they would actually give me feedback and things about the stuff that they cooked. I wasn't cooking as a kid, but I was in the kitchen with them, and they would just talk about it. You know, I remember my one, actually it was a cousin. There was a cousin of my grandmother. She used to always say, "Quit putting salt on your food. It's already in the food when you cook it," right? And so just certain things like that, you know, when I was growing up, just started affecting me, and it increased my knowledge base, and it made me more mindful of health. Anyway, going on in terms of, actually, I just want to talk about how we got on the subject to begin with.
Yeah.
And so we got on the subject, you know, because Kevin and I, we've been talking about it. I talk about it quite a bit. Is increasing the amount of content that we produce, right? And for us, it's not our sole, actually it's no means of income, right? so for us, you know, because usually in America, in a capitalist society, the thing that motivates you to do something is income, is revenue, is money.
Yeah.
And so
that's the older kind.
Yeah, exactly. So with that in mind, you know, you have to find other motivators to make you do things outside of, you know, financing and those kinds of things. So like we were talking about it, I was like, I find myself like literally almost not sleeping because I get so amped at, you know, like what Miles was saying earlier about creating, and it's just once you start getting the momentum and start feeding the coal into the engine, it's like you don't want to stop. And so you got to make sure that you feed that craving, especially if it's a beneficial thing, right?
Yeah.
Not all cravings are good, but if it's a beneficial thing for you, you got to figure out ways to feed it. And one of the things that I've been one of the things I've been working on for myself personally, and this is how we started talking about it, is to keep myself accountable in a variety of different ways. It's like all of this is content to me, so I just make sure that I constantly put out more and more content, and the more that I do that, it feeds back into the aspect of me creating more. And so every day I make sure I create something. Lately I've been creating at least 2 or 3 things on a consistent and daily basis, so that's what I'm doing. And that momentum, I was telling Kevin that I don't want to kill it. I'm trying to figure out more ways to where I can incorporate it into my work life, to where it becomes something that I just do as opposed to something that I have to force myself to do. So the more routine I can make it, then
yeah, let me address this real quick.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. Go ahead.
Okay. Hey, Miss Charlene. Yeah. For all of you watching on my page, we have 2 live streams going on at the same time. So that's why, Miss Charlene, you'll see, you know, you ask the question why I only see me watching, but you are talking to others. That's why. I'm sorry. Yeah, maybe if I move it right here.
Yeah. Okay, because we have two different camera setups. Okay, so Kevin's trying to consolidate the things, which is actually what I'm talking about. Consolidating your efforts to make sure that you can keep your momentum going. And so one of the ways that's not necessarily incorporated in the 4 C's to keep that momentum rolling is to plan. Right? Understanding what the goals are and making sure that you see there, y'all gonna confuse people. Hey, we can't help it. And so one of the things that you can do is make sure that you plan ahead. So like when we had this discussion, actually I had the discussion with Rachel earlier as well, is just being mindful of all the efforts that you're putting forward and making sure that you're utilizing it and being as efficient as possible. Like Kevin said, you have a certain tank of self-discipline on a daily basis. And this goes across to everybody. It's like there's been scientific studies that show that you you have a set amount of discipline throughout the day.
Yeah.
And the way that you curb that discipline, or the way that you basically enhance it, is you have systems in place.
Man, I was going to,
that help you maintain it. So instead of worrying about, it's like, okay, say that I have an affinity for cookies and cakes like they were talking about earlier, then what I do in order to make sure I maintain this amount of discipline, I either have alternatives in my household, in my surroundings, and two, I just don't have it in my vicinity to begin with.
Yeah.
Right? I keep it out of my environment. So now, guess what? Today, when I get up, it's like I can go get some fruit. I can go get some the cacao bark or whatever. I can get some agave, whatever it is, as a substitute, and I'll have those snacks in place. So now that discipline hasn't been depleted at all. So now I can focus my discipline on bigger tasks, right? So a plan definitely helps you keep momentum, and it also helps you streamline your efforts.
Having systems help you keep that momentum.
Yes, exactly. You got to streamline your efforts and make sure that again, it's as you remove the thought as much as possible. It's like with money management.
Yeah.
One of the first things they tell you, have systems in place.
Yes.
You don't have to worry about your money. Just have it automatically going to certain locations.
Yes, that's one of the lessons I learned early on when it came to money management. It's funny that you mentioned that. Is that you set up? It takes a while to set up a system, but once you get that system set up, then it makes life so much more easier and a little more effortless when it comes to specifically wealth building and having capital in place. That's important in a capitalistic society, is to have capital set aside for venture and for to make investments and stuff like that. But just getting back on trail, it's important to have systems set up in place. For example, by paying yourself first, and like you said, having stuff automatically be moved around and shifted around and placed in accounts and stuff like that. That's been a simple tactic that I've used over the years that has made life so much more easier when it comes to just building savings and building capital that can one day be used for investment and stuff like that. What was that?
She said, well, I guess I have to polish off this ice cream to get it out of my way.
Hey, if it's in the environment, something's got to be done with it. So if you need some help polishing that ice cream off, you can definitely mail me some or send me some virtual ice cream, and I'll definitely virtually consume that with you.
Kevin gonna be on the screen. Ooh, eat that again. Yeah. Oh, man, it's awesome.
Yeah, just hey, Miles, just to have a live stream, you just eating ice cream.
Exactly. You get that smell-o-vision rolling.
Get the ice cream tribe out there going. No,
it's terrible. That was terrible.
Hey,
let's see, Rachel earlier. I'm going back just to find some of this stuff. Let's see, actually, Miles, she said, I find I get impatient with myself when it comes to creating, and I have to put it down for a few and come back to it. And then Rachel, I'll address that as well. Rachel said, yep, I've been working on a project, and today I just had to walk away so I can refresh and clear my mind about it. I was getting tunnel vision.
Sometimes you do have to put stuff down.
But one thing that I will tell you, Miles, in terms of creating, I don't know what it is you're creating exactly, but in terms of creating, just start. Like literally, just start. Because again, I'm gonna go Seth Godin on you, right? I'm gonna chastise you a little bit, in a loving way, of course.
In a loving way.
And one of the things that he mentioned, and this is why you got to start creating momentum and get going. You have to get going, because he gave an example. We were referring to an interview we posted a while back, and he was like, people come to me talking about they have a creativity block, they have a writer's block, and those kinds of things. And he's like, okay, show me your work, and they don't have anything. and basically what he said was literally, he said, you don't have a writer's block, you just aren't doing anything, you're lazy. And I don't want to call you lazy, but right. I'm saying, but basically you have to do something, you have to just start. And one of the things, for example, I'll give you a momentum example. Yesterday I went live because I had it in my notes, I had it in my to-do app of what I'm going to do this week. And one of the things I put in my to-do app in terms of creating content for the week was go live doing a live drawing, right? And one of the things for me is like, like the stuff that I've been doing on the lives, I don't have an idea about it. I just do it just to force myself into it, because I can't say I have a creative block if I'm not even attempting to create. So so one of the other ways you can create more and produce more and keep your momentum going is eliminate your excuses. And I'm saying this in a loving way, because this is what I have to do for myself. My nature is not to talk to people. Mm-hmm. My nature is to just sit at my desk and work on stuff I want to work on. My nature is to do a whole variety of other things than what I normally do, right? So I change my nature by forcing myself. It's like a motor axon. I force myself to do stuff. I just do it, and then I worry about the consequences later, right? So in terms of, like, we went live yesterday at 12?
Yeah.
We went live like 1 p.m. and we had another live going at the same time, kind of like what's going on right now. And one of the things that we did was we just did it. We just did it. It was just like, okay, let's just do it.
A lot of times when we get on, we really don't have a topic in mind. So sometimes it just comes down to maybe having like a 1 minute conversation and just pushing the live button and forcing ourselves to kind of come up with something as we. You gotta fight through your excuses.
You have to fight through your excuses, because your mind is going to give you all kinds of options out of it. They seem like great options, but really they're just excuses, and you got to make sure that your mind is not, because again, your mind is a very stubborn thing, which is good. You want your mind to be stubborn. You just want it to be stubborn in the right way.
Oh man, that speaks to that speaks to what Seth Godin talked about resistance.
Yeah.
And that a lot of times when you desire, you want to do something, you'll notice that your mind will come up.
The lizard brain.
It will come up with resistance on why you shouldn't, can't, or why it's better not to. And even in face of that resistance, we have to find the inner drive to overcome that and move in the face of that. And that's something that many of us just have to do on a daily basis.
Oh, yeah. All the time.
Like you talked about, it's your nature to not really do live streams, but for whatever reason, you find yourself doing them. That's my nature too. My nature is not to be on social media. My nature is not to be doing live stream. That's the natural me. But this is something I like to do. It's something that I feel moved to do. So that's why we do them. And it's a way to have fun, aggregate information, and just develop and connect with a tribe of people, with the community out there that may feel and think the same way that we do, and just have some fun times, good times in this world that we live in.
Yep.
I was going to say something else, but I forgot what I was going to say.
Okay, well, I'll read these comments. Let's see. Kimber said, "Throw it away."
No, you can't do that. The ice cream. You can't do that.
Don't listen to Kevin. Mona said, "I really appreciate y'all this evening. I haven't been sleeping as much lately because I've been doing a lot of brainstorming." That's good. Make sure. I would advise you. I'm sorry. I'm looking up at the
screen.
Computer. We got screens on screens over here. In case you don't, we got 5 screens rolling.
We got NASDAQ over here.
but yeah, make sure that you still try to get as much sleep as possible. That's important, Mona. I don't want you. I understand. Trust me. I'm basically do as I say and not as I do, because I'm sleepy as I'll get out right now, because I have not been asleep. I've not been asleep.
Right here, Miss Charlene on my feed said, "I was getting out of my shell, then a situation arose, and I went back to my shell. I realized this too, so I will come out again and try harder." And that's what we're talking about, as far as having the momentum to get out of your shell. And then life has a way of trying to knock you back into whatever makes makes you feel comfortable and safe, but we're not going to experience the full optimization of what we're designed and destined to be unless we get out of our comfort zone. So you have to find a way to get back out of your shell and stay out.
She said, is that food Alzheimer's kicking in?
food Alzheimer's. Yeah. Yeah, that's what it is.
See, Kimber said, eliminate excuses. Miles said, I started drawing and I want it done, and I get sloppy, and then I end up erasing part of it. Here's one of the things that I do, right? I'll give you an example. You can look at my lives, not just to plug it, but you can check out what Drawing Lives is. But anyway, one of the things you can do, and again, I do this on purpose, and so relating to drawing, that's something I can relate to personally, something that I do on a regular basis, is the way I got out of worrying about finishing a drawing or having a drawing be too sloppy is I started letting people watch me doing my process. And what that does, it just helps you overcome those anxieties of why you want something done. I've been there like, okay, I want to rush and make this, do this, and I want to produce something. But again, it's like if you get to a sticking point on a particular piece, draw something else, but keep drawing. And too often what we do is we just stop working.
Yeah.
So make sure that you keep drawing. Like I was showing Kevin my sketch iPad over here. We'll get a 6th screen rolling, and I don't even know if you can see it, but I have like tons of drawings that I have in between the drawings that I'm working on.
Yeah.
And I do that just to keep my mind rolling, so I can make sure that I don't give myself an excuse to stop.
Yes. Because always be creative.
Yeah, because once you stop, I'm telling you, it's like hard. It's like you start giving yourself excuses. You'll start thinking about it. Oh yeah, I was thinking about if I do this, if I do that, this, that, and the other. But you have to keep going. You have to make sure that you're constantly producing. It's the same thing whether you're doing code, whether you're working on a new problem. It's like if you're having a sticking point with understanding one aspect of something, then go to something else and come back.
Yeah.
Or just sit down and grunt it out and get past the sticking point. Because eventually you're going to have to do that if you want to accomplish the task, right? So it's just something you just have to slowly cultivate, and it just takes time. And that's what we're talking about with momentum. You gotta always be constantly,
always be creating,
always, and you have to make sure that you don't give yourself any reason to stop. Once I'm telling you, it's
I know
easy.
by experience.
An object that stays in motion remains in motion. So you want to make sure that you keep that object in motion with your motivation, your creativity, your engine. You gotta keep that engine rolling.
Yeah, I went to the gym earlier for the first time in 3 weeks, and I was on a good momentum where I was doing the gym for the last year and a half.
Yeah.
And then somehow, some way, I got knocked off, and it's been like 3 weeks since I actually set foot in a gym.
Because stopping is really easy.
It's really easy to stop.
It's too easy. It's too comfortable. What's up, sweetie? There's my daughter in the background. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't see it, baby. You see my daughter in the background. She's making a guest appearance. Let's see. Let me read some of these other ones. It's funny. You see the delay. We're coming to the resistance and what is up with that. Yeah, Kimber said, I don't like mental resistance. It's just there until you basically cultivate it out of yourself. It just, those weeds will start growing once you quit tending the yard.
The garden.
So you got to keep tending the garden. It's just something you have to keep.
Yeah.
You got to keep tending that garden, or the weeds will sprout up. They're there. Fear, doubt, uncertainty, all of that
anxiety.
stuff.
It's funny you mentioned working through the anxiety. Seth Godin talked about that. Letting yourself feel the anxiety and letting it dissipate and just working through it. That's one of the secrets that, people who have, one of the fears that a lot of people have, statistically proven in Western society, is a lot of people have the fear of talking in front of other people or talking in front of crowds. And one of the things that happens when people get in front of crowds is they start feeling that intense anxiety, and that, you know, they start tensing up. But one of the secrets is just letting yourself feel it and working through it. So it's funny that you mentioned that anxiety. I was thinking about.
Is anybody else hearing feedback in the sound? We can't tell.
Somebody's hearing feedback?
Constant, but nobody else said anything about it. So don't touch anything.
Okay.
Yeah, Kevin gets nervous and he starts fiddling with stuff.
And now just the whole thing.
Yeah, he'll just
start falling down.
Yeah, it's like I gotta smack his hand like an old granny. Get off that. No. Let's see. Miles says she's gonna have 50 drawings going. Hey, then have 50 drawings going. Make sure you complete something though. Seriously, make sure you complete something. And in most artwork, I was listening to some artists talk. And actually, no, I think I was talking to her. I can't ever remember.
She said, "Yep, feedback."
Okay, yeah, unplug and plug in mic. So do that.
Is this the first time you're hearing feedback?
How about that? Is that